Okay, let's talk about something huge, a massive paradox, right at the heart of the advertising world. We're talking about a fundamental mistake, one that's costing companies millions upon millions of dollars every single year.
Now that quote, it's straight from the research we're looking at today. And it's a pretty staggering claim, right? Think about what it's saying. That a core part of how ads get planned and bought is just built on a faulty premise. And the result is an incredible amount of wasted money.
All right, so what is this method? What's this big idea that's so incredibly popular, but at the same time so flawed that it's causing this huge problem? Well, it has a name, and I can pretty much guarantee you've felt its effects, probably without even realizing it.
It's called effective frequency planning, or EFP for short. And, on the surface, the logic kind of makes sense. The goal isn't just to show you an ad one time. It's to hit you with it a specific number of times. Not too few, not too many, just that Goldilocks amount that's supposed to be the most effective. And listen, this isn't some obscure niche strategy we're talking about. It's everywhere. In fact, it's been incredibly dominant for a long time. One huge survey found that over 86% of ad agencies were using this exact idea in their planning. It basically became the industry Bible.
Okay, so if it's that popular, what's the big deal? What's the problem? Well, to get that, we've got to pop the hood and really look at the core assumptions EFP is built on. Because, well, it turns out they're not just assumptions, they're basically myths.
The whole thing, this entire EFP framework, it really just rests on two big ideas. First, this belief that there's a magic number of times you have to see an ad for it to actually work. And second, the idea that how we respond to ads follows this very specific pattern. They call it an S-shaped curve. So let's break both of those down.
All right, first up, the magic number. For decades, that number was 3. Just 3. And this idea kind of came from an old psychological theory about how we process stuff. The first time you see an ad, you're supposedly thinking, what is this? The second time, what about it? And that third time is just a reminder. The ad industry they ran with this, and 3 exposures became the absolute gold standard for what they called an effective campaign. Okay, now for that second myth, and honestly, this is where the whole thing really falls apart. EFP is built on this idea of an S-shaped curve. That's the one you see on the left. The assumption is that the first couple of times you see an ad, nothing happens. They're basically worthless. But then you hit some magic threshold and bam, effectiveness just skyrockets. But the reality? Well, the reality, backed by tons of research, looks way more like the curve on the right. Simple, classic diminishing returns. And this right here, this is the whole ballgame. In the real world, the single biggest bang for your buck comes from that very first time someone sees an ad. The second time helps, sure, but a little less. The third time, even less. You get it. Each ad you see after that provides less and less value. There is no magic tipping point. So, okay, if the old way, EFP, is built on a pile of myths, then what's the alternative? How are you supposed to plan your ad buys if you're actually living in the real world of diminishing returns? Well, let's get into the solution. It's called frequency value planning. So, frequency value planning, or FVP, it just completely throws that whole magic number idea out the window. Instead, it works from a premise that's, well, it's just a lot more logical. The idea is that every single ad exposure, whether it's the first or the 10th, has some value. The real goal is to figure out what that value is and then just add it all up. And you can see how this is just a massive shift in thinking, right? You stop being obsessed with trying to get every single person to see your ad exactly 3 times. Instead, you start focusing on a much bigger goal, maximizing the total cumulative value that your entire campaign generates. Okay, so I know what you're thinking. This sounds good in theory, but how does that actually work? Let's walk through the process because it really is a much smarter, more data-driven way to think about all of this. So this flowchart here, this basically shows you the whole system. Now, you start with the basics, right? Strategy, objectives, budget, just like any other campaign. But then it gets interesting. Instead of just setting some simple goal like get everyone to see it 3 or more times, you dive into a way more nuanced analysis. Let's just boil that whole diagram down to its 3 core steps. It's pretty straightforward. Step 1, you figure out how many people are likely to see your ad once, twice, 3 times, and so on. Step 2, you estimate your actual response curve. How much value is each of those extra views really worth?
And then finally, step 3, you just do the math. You combine that data to get a total value score for the whole campaign. So you're probably wondering, does this theoretical difference between the S-curve and the real-world curve actually matter? Does it change the numbers? And the answer is, oh yeah, a resounding yes. Let's look at the data. And wow, look at this. This is where the difference just becomes crystal clear. Using the actual data from the research, the FBP model, the one based in reality, it predicts that the very first time someone sees an ad, you get a nearly 25% response. But the old EFP model, it assumes that same ad is almost worthless, clocking in at just 5%. It just tragically, completely undervalues this single most powerful tool in its arsenal. And a difference in the numbers that big, well, it leads to completely different strategies. It totally changes how you spend your money and what you decide to prioritize. So let's see how this all leads to much smarter decisions. It really all comes down to 2 completely different ways of thinking. The old school EFP planner, they're just obsessed with shoving as many people as possible into that 3 or more views bucket, even if it means that fewer people see the ad overall. But the FBP planner, they want to maximize the total value. And what that usually means is prioritizing reach, getting in front of as many different people as possible to cash in on those super powerful first impressions. And this is exactly where all that waste happens. The source we're looking at analyzed 2 different media plans. On paper, one of them looked way better under the old EFP model, just because it had a higher frequency. But it was a total illusion. In reality, it led planners to pay 40% more for literally 0 increase in total value. That is the multi-million-dollar paradox we've been talking about. So, you see, the real goal isn't just about frequency. It was never about hitting some arbitrary number. It's about efficient frequency. The goal of any ad campaign should be getting the most possible impact for every single dollar you spend. And FVP, it's just a framework for actually measuring and optimizing that efficiency.
Which kind of brings it all back to you, right? The next time you're watching TV or scrolling through your phone and you see the same exact ad for like the 5th time, ask yourself, is this effective? Am I the target of some brilliant campaign, or am I just witnessing millions of dollars being wasted in real time?